subscribe and get free vouchers.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's get started with our big focus tonight. It is an event that has left the world absolutely stunned and Lebanon reeling. As if straight out of a Hollywood science fiction movie, in a coordinated and sophisticated attack of a nature and on a scale never seen before in any war or conflict. The past 2 days have seen thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies across Lebanon explode simultaneously, causing huge casualties and grievous injuries. At least 37 people have been killed in the synchronized attacks in the last 2 days, and over 3,500 have been injured. Hospitals in Beirut have been overwhelmed. Most of those targeted in these attacks were Hezbollah fighters, but scores of civilians, including children, have been hurt too. On Tuesday, witnesses saw smoke coming from people's pockets before seeing explosions that sounded like fireworks and gunshots. The pagers received messages that appeared to be coming from Hezbollah's leadership before detonating. The messages instead appeared to trigger the devices. Explosions continued for around an hour after the initial blasts. At least one of the walkie-talkie explosions that took place on Wednesday occurred in the vicinity of a large crowd that had gathered for the funerals of 4 victims of Tuesday's pager blasts. Chaotic scenes erupted as ambulances struggled to reach the injured and locals became suspicious of anyone using a phone. Hospital staff in Lebanon have performed over 450 surgeries, mostly on eyes and faces, with many also treating hand injuries. Dozens of wounded people have been taken to Iran and Syria for further treatment. While it hasn't directly claimed responsibility, it never does, the needle of suspicion undoubtedly points at Israel. In fact, in what sounds like an admission, Israel has said a new era of war has begun. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has also said the center of gravity is moving north, referencing the Lebanon border and tacitly acknowledging Israel's role in the shock attacks that have pushed the region back to the brink of a wider conflict. Lebanese Foreign Minister Abdullah Abu Habib has said he fears that the attacks signal a move to an introduction to war. He said it's a scary moment and we are afraid of coming to war because we don't want a war. Lebanon and Hezbollah have laid the blame at Israel's doorstep. Lebanon's communications ministry has said the walkie-talkie devices that exploded on Wednesday were a discontinued model made by the Japanese firm ICOM. The ICV-82 radios were not supplied by a recognized agent, were not officially licensed and had not been verified or vetted by the security services, according to the ministry. The firm has said the model was discontinued a decade ago and it could not determine whether these devices were counterfeit or shipped from its company. The question on everybody's mind is this: just how were these attacks carried out? Where did the devices come from? And will this plunge the Middle East into a wider conflict? Western media has quoted Lebanese security sources as saying Hezbollah had bought the pagers that exploded about 5 months ago. Reports say Israel planted explosives next to the battery in each pager, as well as a switch for remote detonation. The supply chain of these electronic devices seems to stretch from Asia to Europe. American media has quoted sources in the security establishment of Israel as saying that Israel launched the pager attacks after it believed that its plan had been discovered by Hezbollah, making it a use it or lose it moment. Analysts say the motive behind the attacks could also be that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu possibly wanted to shore up domestic support for his unpopular government. Officials and residents from northern Israel have become increasingly vocal about the need to return to their homes after being evacuated due to cross-border attacks by Hezbollah that have gone on for a long time. Hezbollah, which has been exchanging fire with Israel at least since the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza began last October, has vowed retribution, warning that Israel will definitely receive a fair punishment for this sinful assault, both in ways that are expected and unexpected. Iran, whose ambassador to Lebanon was injured in these attacks, has vowed revenge as well. The United Nations has expressed grave concern that the coordinated attacks amount to a violation of international humanitarian law and urged an independent, thorough and transparent investigation. Beirut's Rafiq Hariri International Airport has banned pagers and walkie-talkies from being carried onto flights. Any such devices will be confiscated by airport security if found, the notice warns. People across Lebanon are now terrified of everyday communication devices following 2 days of deadly pager and walkie-talkie blasts. Many are abandoning their mobile phones out of fear. Many rumors and messages are wildly circulating, telling people to shut off their Wi-Fi routers or to take out batteries from electronic devices. Nobody knows when and from where the next round of attacks might come. Hezbollah has long touted secrecy as a cornerstone of its military strategy, foregoing high-tech devices to avoid infiltration from Israeli and US spyware. At the start of the year, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah called on its members and their families in southern Lebanon, where fighting with Israeli forces across the border has been raging, to dump their cell phones, believing that Israel could track their movements through those devices. Hezbollah has relied heavily on pagers as a low-tech means of communications to try and evade location tracking by Israel. Pagers are wireless telecommunications devices that receive and display alphanumeric or voice messages. They are much harder to track than mobile phones. But this massive intelligence and security failure has come as a body blow to Hezbollah. Experts say this will also lead to a crippling of the group's communications network because they'll have to revamp it completely to try and avoid further penetration by its enemies. The precision attacks are a huge setback to Hezbollah's ability to mobilize forces, coordinate attacks and manage logistics. The fact that Israel got into their supply network, as is widely believed, is unprecedented. This leaves Hezbollah vulnerable if Israel moves forward with its military plans. Israel's ability to penetrate Hezbollah's communication network could even signal to countries like Syria, Egypt and Jordan that their systems may be vulnerable to similar infiltration. Of course, Israel's alleged history of planting explosives in telecommunication devices goes back as far as 1972, as part of its revenge for the killing of 11 Israelis, including athletes, at the Munich Olympics, which was carried out by the Palestinian militant group Black September. In response, Israel launched Operation Wrath of God and spent years tracking down those involved in the Munich massacre. These attacks also come as a reminder of the 1996 killing of Yahya Ayash, Hamas's chief bomb maker known as the Engineer. Ayash was killed in Gaza after his cell phone, which had been packed with explosives, blew up near his head. The use of pagers and walkie-talkies in back-to-back coordinated explosions in Lebanon has drawn scrutiny to the security of global supply chains and their vulnerability to tampering by governments as well as non-state actors. As one expert argued, somehow thousands of devices were turned into weapons without anyone noticing it. How widespread are these explosive devices? How did the explosives get into the devices or the device supply chains? This attack raises terrifying questions that were never even considered before. The question we're asking on Global Lens tonight is this: are Israel's pager and walkie-talkie attacks in Lebanon a tipping point and a game changer, not just in the Middle East conflict, but also in modern warfare in general? With the danger of electronic devices and everyday gadgets exploding now lurking in almost every corner, is the world a far more vulnerable and dangerous place today? If it's a pager and a walkie-talkie being weaponized today, could it be a smartphone tomorrow? Has Israel opened a Pandora's box, making everyone, including possibly its own citizens, vulnerable to attacks of a similar nature in the future? After all, other actors, including terror outfits, could draw inspiration from such tactics. Just what will this terrifying new phase of war, as Israel describes it, lead to next?
Smoke billowed from a cell phone shop in Sidon, Lebanon on Wednesday after handheld radios used by Hezbollah detonated across the country's south. Lebanon's health ministry said several people were killed in the latest attack and hundreds were wounded. The death toll from Tuesday's pager explosions rose to 12, including 2 children, with nearly 3,000 injured. At a funeral for 4 of those killed by the exploding pagers, Hezbollah official Hashem Saifuddin promised a response.
This aggression inevitably has its own punishment. It has its own retribution. This punishment will come, God willing. We will not talk much, as tomorrow the talk will be for the master of the resistance.
Hezbollah said on Wednesday it had attacked Israeli artillery positions with rockets in its first strike at its arch foe since the pager blasts. A senior Lebanese security source said the explosives were planted months earlier by Israel's spy agency, Mossad. Israel's military has declined to comment on the blasts.
It's imperative that all parties refrain from any actions that could escalate the conflict.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in Cairo to advance efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, said the detonations in Lebanon threatened to derail diplomatic efforts in the Middle East. Later, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the incidents risked a dramatic escalation in the region.
Because obviously, the logic of making all these devices explode is to do it as a preemptive strike before a major military operation.
A security source said the handheld radios were purchased by Hezbollah 5 months ago, around the same time the group bought the pagers. 2 sources familiar with the group's operations told Reuters its fighters began using pagers, hoping to evade Israeli tracking. A Reuters reporter in the southern suburbs of Beirut said he saw Hezbollah members frantically taking out the batteries of any walkie-talkies on them that had not exploded. Meanwhile, Israel released video on Wednesday that showed Defense Minister Yoav Gallant telling troops that more forces were being sent to the northern border, where Lebanon borders Israel, as the war moved into a new phase.
All right, so what exactly has happened and what could its aftermath be? There are a lot of questions that need answering. Joining me on Global Lens tonight is Itai Melchior, former executive at the Israeli National Security Council and a renowned Middle East expert. We also have with us Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, former Indian diplomat. In a moment, we are hoping to be joined by Dr. Zakir Hussain. In fact, we believe we do have him with us. Dr. Zakir Hussain, Middle East expert and former research fellow at the Indian Council of World Affairs. And in a moment, we will also have with us Major General Ashwini Sivaj, defense and geopolitical expert. Gentlemen, welcome to Global Lens. I need to take a quick break here on the show. We will have this conversation on the other side.
Hey, careful, huh? My daddy got it from abroad. Hey, disaster! How will you pay for the loss now?
In stock market, you should take risk as per your capacity and knowledge. Trade in options very carefully.
Wow, Dikra! Absolutely perfect. Take risk with full understanding.
Invest
Fast.
My God, isn't she your daughter?
Yes.
She's playing football. This is boys' game. Make her study. If she doesn't get a good job, she will get a good match. Will you win the world by playing football?
Yes, auntie. My daughter will win the world by playing football.
Let's go to Germany.
World's largest football talent hunt, News9 Indian Tigers and Tigresses. In association with DFB Pokal, Bundesliga, BVB and India Football Center. Train and play matches in Europe. Register now and fly to Germany. IndianTigersandTigresses.com.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
And Muktiwani Yoda was aide to Sheikh Mujib came to my CEO. I told him that the family of Sheikh Mujib is under captivity of the Pakistani forces. The first lady came with Sheikh Mujib and she embraced me and said, the God, the Allah has sent you to save us. Modi ji and the Hasina. During talk, she brought out this point again that Major Ashok Tara of Indian Army said me, my mother, my sister, my brother, we got independent on 17th December because of Ashok Tara.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're discussing the aftermath of the unprecedented, synchronized and sophisticated pager and walkie-talkie attacks that have been witnessed in Lebanon in the last 2 days. Let me begin with Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar. Ambassador, I have so many questions, I don't even know where to begin. Let me try anyway. The most fundamental question that we want to pose on the show tonight is this. With these attacks that are clearly of an unprecedented nature, has Israel, in a sense, set a very dangerous new precedent? Are these pager and walkie-talkie attacks a tipping point and a game changer, not just in the Middle East conflict, but in fact in modern warfare itself? Has Israel opened a whole new Pandora's box?
Yeah, thank you very much, Neha. Yes, I would think so, because it is a new, Israel says it's a new phase of the war, but it's not only the war, it's not going to have implications and repercussions only for the conflict that is taking place here in north of Israel, Lebanon, etc., or Hamas, Gaza. The reverberations will be heard much beyond what is happening here. So I think when we are discussing it, we need to discuss what is going to be the impact of this in this particular region. How is Hezbollah going to respond? Is it Israel going to engage in a land operation? Antonio Guterres also mentioned, this has also been said, by several other analysts and commentators, that maybe Israel is been preparing for an attack on the Hezbollah and its northern borders because of the problems it's been facing, the rockets, missiles, drones, etc., that have been coming. So that is one particular aspect that we have to consider, Neha. But I think its repercussions are much beyond this. My point here is, what could I compare it with, in terms of the new elements of modern technological warfare that have started? Like, maybe what was it in 2020 when we had the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh? It was, the use of drones. And that came as a big surprise, meaning it was something new that had been done, that has been used. But now you see that drones are an everyday feature of any conflict. You know, you see the Russia-Ukraine conflict, you have it there in other theaters of war and operations. It has happened there. I will not go so far as to suggest that, you know, in terms of the changes that it is bringing, it is something like, you know, the 9/11 attack that in 2001 that took place, because after that, you know, there have not been similar attacks that have been attempted, that have been tried by anyone. And they were of a much bigger nature in terms of the damage, in terms of the destruction, in terms of the violence. You know, they were much bigger. So I will not go to that extent, but definitely I can compare it to the drone attacks. What I think, in addition to you know, the drones will come, and of course we have seen there can be very targeted attacks against the enemy, but here it is going right up to the individual. And it is not in terms of, you know, if there is a bomb, if there is a missile, if there's something, that it is a much the destruction and the death is on a much bigger scale. Here it is individualizing the impact, the target. And I think that can have very, very serious implications and repercussions. So I think we need to discuss both in terms of the impact that it is going to have in this theater. And I think that's definitely going to be huge in terms of the impact, because Hezbollah has already threatened that they are going to respond. And I don't think their word should be taken lightly.
Their word should not be taken lightly. And let me inform you and the viewers, sir, that just minutes ago, Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah addressed his people and said Israel has crossed all red lines. Its declaration of war, these attacks amount to massacres. Let me now bring in our Israeli guest, Itai Melchior. Itai, I know that most Israelis would be patting themselves on the back, congratulating each other, gloating perhaps over what's happened in Lebanon over the last 2 days. There is no doubt that the scale and nature of these attacks is mind-boggling, to say the least. However, my straight question to you is this: hasn't Israel opened a Pandora's box and made everyone, including possibly its own citizens, vulnerable to similar attacks in the future? Today it is Israel mounting these attacks on Hezbollah, which it considers a terror outfit and its enemy. Tomorrow it could be the government of Iran, or it could be a terror outfit. It could be anyone at all mounting a similar attack on Israel or on any other country or people or entity anywhere in the world. Today we're talking about a pager or a walkie-talkie. Tomorrow it could be a smartphone. Where does it end? Isn't this new phase of war that Israel is talking about a terrifying one?
Like many other security issues, Neha, there's no reason to be terrified if you're in the clear. People in Europe are petrified of their privacy and of governments invading their privacy and rights. And the same is true here. This was a very targeted attack, very careful not to harm civilians. And you have to remember that this question may have been valid 11 months ago. But since Hezbollah is waging war in Israel, this is a bit late to ask this question. We are at war for 11 months. By the way, Israel and Lebanon have no tiff, have no quarrel, have no disagreement on anything, no border dispute, no dispute whatsoever. And the only reason Hezbollah, which is not a Lebanese organization, is targeting Israel is at the behest of Iran, who are operating them as a proxy, like the Houthis in Yemen or Hamas in Gaza and other militias in Iraq and other places. So there really shouldn't have been anything there, but tragically we have more than 100,000 people not living in their homes for almost a year. We have dozens dead. Hezbollah has recently targeted further away areas of those evacuated, also firing missiles at areas which are not which are not evacuated, and people living in terror already for close to a year. Now, the time has come, and the Israeli government has warned again and again Hezbollah to keep to the international decision, the 1701 UN decision, which cleared up after the 2006 Lebanon war, where Hezbollah attacked Israel. So that is what Israel is asking. Now, I don't think that Hezbollah understood that they should stop this. One thing they understood was that using cell phones was dangerous, and Nasrallah himself kept warning that having a cell phone in your pocket is like having a Mossad agent in your pocket, and that's why they were all moving to those pages, which I think most of your viewers don't even know exactly what it means, because this is something that has left the world in the 90s. And this is in the end the demise and what actually enabled Israeli tech whizzes to orchestrate this attack.
Itai, since you have to leave the show in a few minutes, I want to ask you a follow-up question. When Israel says that this is a new phase of war, and Yoav Gallant, your defense minister, says the center of gravity is moving north, he's clearly referring to the Lebanon border. Firstly, he seems to be tacitly acknowledging Israel's role in these attacks in Lebanon. And two, what exactly does this new phase mean? What could it entail? As we speak, we are hearing reports that Israel has launched further attacks in Lebanon. In fact, it is striking targets in Lebanon as sonic booms have been heard over Beirut, and this began during the Hezbollah leader's speech. That is what we know at the moment. Are you not concerned that this is going to plunge the region into a wider conflict? Hezbollah has vowed revenge, so has Iran, whose ambassador was injured in these attacks.
Yes, so several factors to remember. One, I don't think that Minister Gallant meant that he took responsibility for the attack. Israel hasn't claimed responsibility for it, but Israel has moved a lot of forces up north. We have for the last 2 or 3 weeks seen increased rhetoric of Israel against Lebanon, because they had Hezbollah had increased the perimeter which they've been attacking, as I said earlier, and there's been increased pressure in Israel on the government to act on this. Also from the opposition, who actually wants a ceasefire in Gaza, they want a stronger strike in Lebanon against Hezbollah. And we see that also the government just a few days ago added to its declaration of targets of the war, having all the citizens of the north return home. By the way, a similar number of Lebanese civilians have had to leave their homes in southern Lebanon. And this is, again, not because Israel chose this. So that said, I still don't think we're spiraling out here. As you alluded to earlier on, I don't think Israel chose this time now. It was probably more opportunistic, as some say that there was some suspicion already along Hezbollah ranks that something is wrong and they had to use it now or lose it. Remember, we have the UN General Assembly coming up towards the end of the month. Netanyahu is supposed to speak there and go there. I don't think he wants this cancelled. Remember, we have elections in the US just less than 2 months away, and the administration does not want any war now. So I think everybody is trying very, very hard to suppress this. Again, the attacks Israel is carrying out today are not very unusual for the last 11 months, attacking warehouses of missiles, manufacturing sites, launch sites. That's sadly quite common. We've actually seen larger scale attacks a few weeks ago as a preemptive strike, and planes flying over Beirut while Nasrallah is speaking from his bunker. That's also become more or less something that we are getting used to in this region, sadly. So no, I don't see it spiraling out of control right now. Again, as I always tell you, with a little asterisk, there could be a miscalculation. Civilians on one of the sides could be hurt, like happened in the Druze village in northern Israel in Majel Shams, where 12 young children were killed by Hezbollah rockets. So yes, if something out of the ordinary of this type happens, then this may escalate. But otherwise, I think everybody is trying to keep this to the same status quo we've seen so far. And actually, Hezbollah might pick up. I understand there's a new offer from the Americans, maybe to get to some agreement. I think that many of the people that have been targeted in Hezbollah ranks are commanders an organization with many commanders not able to function, has big problems to carry out. I don't think it was Hezbollah's intention to begin with to start a full-out war, and I think they're less capable now. So hopefully everybody will come to the senses and we will see some kind of de-escalation, hopefully with an agreement and without any further round of fighting.
You seem to sound very optimistic that everybody might come to their senses and we will not see a further escalation and nothing is spiraling out of control. Hopefully, maybe in Itai's universe, there will also be return of peace and normalcy very soon. But I'm not sure if Hezbollah looks at the situation the way Itai does, because their chief announced just minutes ago this is a declaration of war by Israel. What they've done amounts to massacres. They've crossed all red lines. But on that note, Itai Melchior, I will thank you for joining me on Global Lens tonight. Look forward to having you back on the show. Of course, we also have Major General Ashwini Sivach and Dr. Zakir Hussain with us on the show. Gentlemen, please stay on with me. I need to take a quick break here on Global Lens. We'll continue this conversation on the other side.
This is News9 Live, India's only digital exclusive live stream. For the early adopters, bringing you the news 24/7. For the smart audiences on the smartest TVs. News9 Live. Stream now on your smart TVs.
It's said that out of 7 diamonds across the world, 5 are cut and polished in India.
Don't forget, US is the largest consumer of, polished diamonds and the diamond jewelry. And that has taken a big beating for multiple reasons, but largely because of the consumer spending going down on these items. And that's essentially what has hit the diamond industry.
We are at a brim where you see not just one, but multiple very strong global brands coming out of India. And we will make a global market. I'm convinced about that.
This and more. Streaming on News9 plus news is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
For the very first time in our investigation, we unmasked the killer of Ravindra Matre.
In 5G, we have to stand with the world, and in 6G, we have to lead the world.
Winning a Grammy was an absolutely surreal experience.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're discussing the aftermath of the unprecedented pager and walkie-talkie attacks that have taken place in Lebanon in the last 2 days. Dr. Zakir Hussain, let me come to you now. Reports suggest people across Lebanon are now so terrified of their everyday communication devices following these 2 days of deadly pager and walkie-talkie blasts. Many are abandoning their mobile phones out of fear. There are many rumors and messages that are circulating telling people to shut off their Wi-Fi routers or to take out batteries from their electronic devices. Everyone's living in fear and wondering where the next attack might come from. Now, the reality that we are faced with today in the aftermath of these attacks is this, that today a pager or a walkie-talkie has been weaponized. Tomorrow, it could be a smartphone of the kind that you use and that I use. The question is, have we entered a very, very dangerous era of warfare just in the last 48 hours?
Till now, we were talking about sleeper cell in society. Now that sleeper cell has moved to our electronic devices, and we are moving about it, and it has a larger repercussion on it. And simply that people should stop, countries will stop purchasing electronic devices from outside, and they will focus to develop their own. Number one. Number second, that supply chain regulation has also been tempered, and countries are very concerned that what will happen if this happens to big companies like Apple and others. So this attack is not confined only to Israel, but it has weaponized the civilian communication equipments, which United Nations Secretary General said should not be done like that. So it has moved the realm of war from war battleground to the people's house. So it is not accepted, and there must be some international call on this, and some regulations must be made on this, that civilian electronic equipment must not be used as a weapon. So what I think that this is a very dangerous thing, though Hezbollah and Hamas may be settling their discourse, but they have opened a new warfare for anyone, for terrorists, for any state rogue element who can manage this situation, who can do whatever they like. So the world, not only Israel, but the world has entered in a new era of warfare. So this is my understanding. The situation is very grave.
I couldn't agree more. I think the world is a much more dangerous place now. It's a far more vulnerable place today, as if the wars that have been going on in different parts of the world weren't bad enough. And these are uncharted waters that we've entered. Major General Ashwini Savaj, let me come to you, sir. It may not be a whodunit, because everybody believes Israel has done it, but it's certainly a howdunit. How on earth were these attacks carried out? Like I said at the start of the show, the scenes we saw in Lebanon seem to be straight out of a Hollywood science fiction movie. Now, the company that was manufacturing these pagers has said that it discontinued this model 10 years ago. There are reports in the Western media that say that Hezbollah had bought these pagers just 5 months ago, and Israel had planted explosives next to the battery in each pager and a switch for remote detonation. In your view, sir, how mind-boggling are these attacks? I think it would be pretty safe to say that the nature and the scale is unprecedented. Where is this leading us, sir? Where is this leading us?
Neha, no doubt, this is a new era of warfare, but this is nothing very new. See, the point today is that cyber warfare encompasses all such type of attacks. Now, when we are talking about the pagers are the most difficult to be targeted. And that's why there was a order which was given by Hassan Nasrullah that possibly the mobile phone can be targeted. The smartphone are easy to target, because they are even giving your location. Pager do not have a GPS, it does not have a microphone, it doesn't have a camera. So it is difficult to target that. You can only target by putting a device inside, which has been very rightly done by whosoever is done. Let's say, assuming Israel had done it, And it has been done that Golden Apollo company is not manufacturing in Taiwan. It was being manufactured somewhere in Hungary. It came 5 months back. There is a supply chain. This can be sabotaged anywhere in between. But having said so, one can say with a lot of conviction that the more difficult was to target something which was rudimentary like pager, which has been outdated. But if you think that it won't be used in a mobile phone, it's far, far easier because there are so many mechanisms. Whether Ismail Hania, who was killed in Tehran, or you can say Shakur, who was killed, Fawaz Shakur, they possibly may have been killed through their mobile phone only because it is easy to target. So now let's analyze it how this is going to impact the warfare in future. You see, the warfare in future is already been weaponized. Now, very rightly, Ambassador brought out that Azerbaijan-Armenia warfare brought drones. And the Azerbaijan victory over Armenia is due to the drones which were given by Turkey and Israel. Then came swarm drones. And then this has again been a classic use which was used both by Russia and Ukraine. Until unless a counter technology of drone comes, drone will rule the roost. But now let's imagine what is being done now in Lebanon. This has opened a new front. A new front is that what are the characteristic of this warfare? One is that all your electronic items can be hacked and they can act like a weapon which you are carrying yourself to kill yourself. That is future warfare which is going to happen. And the next point, which is very important, is that you have to now have a measure for countering this. How you counter that, that has to be evolved. See, as far as the warfare is concerned, in any conventional army, you have ECM, electronic countermeasure. And then there is something called ECCM, electronic counter to countermeasure. Now imagine in this sort of thing, one very important thing which happen in such type of attack is there is a deniability factor. You keep on saying, I have not done it. No one can say for 100% sure.
Deniability factor, Israel anyway never owns up to these covert operations that it's been engaging in for decades. But sir, I just want to come in there for a moment. One quick clarification. Since you talked about the future possibility of our electronic devices, including smartphones, being hacked, well, one can certainly not rule out something like that happening in the future. But as far as the attacks of the last 2 days are concerned, well, on the first day, a lot of people thought that the pagers had been hacked. Now it has been reported that in all likelihood, these pagers and walkie-talkies had been planted with explosives beforehand, before they found their way to these Hezbollah fighters. Is that correct?
Very correct. Yeah, very correct. See, what happened is that if you have a smartphone, you don't have to put explosive. There are many other methods of targeting because your location is known by the enemy and you can be targeted by laser beam. There are so many methods. But as far as the pagers and walkie-talkie is concerned, these are rudimentary. These are one which are no more in use. They have a very less signature as far as the electronic items are concerned. Hence, there is a requirement of foreign item to be put as an explosive, which a 3-gram plastic explosive was incorporated in all these model, and thereafter there is a lithium battery. So both have blasted and they acted like a bomb, which was being carried by the individual himself to kill himself. No, that has happened. Now you are trying to convey whether the smartphone can be also targeted. Obviously, it's so easy to target a smartphone, and that's why Hassan Nasrallah has passed order to all Hezbollah cadre that they will not carry a smart telephone. They should bury it in the ground, and they can only carry a pager. And that is where, Israel could even target pager. So this is a new warfare which has opened. I will only like to draw a parallel. What happened in a conventional warfare in case such thing happens? You remember that before a bullet can be fired, the enemy can totally paralyze your electronic communication system. And if that happens, your missile, your rockets, your drones, which are all using electronic signature, will stop functioning. So without a bullet is being fired, the enemy can conquer you. That is the biggest problem. And that's why you make electronic countermeasure. How do you ensure that the enemy cannot do what they are want to do? And how you ensure what you want to do to the enemy cannot counter it. So there is a race going on this issue, but no one has seen that it will be used like this in a conventional warfare where civilians are targeted.
Fact of the matter is, Israel or Israeli supporters may claim that targets were only Hezbollah fighters. These were precision attacks, but fact is civilians, including children, have also been hurt. Unfortunately, there is always, unquote, collateral damage of this nature. In fact, many have said that this in some ways comes as a reminder of the 1996 killing of Yahya Ayash, Hamas's chief bomb maker, who was known as the engineer. He was killed in Gaza after his cell phone that had been packed with explosives blew up near his head. So while Israel may have done something of this sort in the past, certainly not on this scale. That is new, that's unprecedented, that's dangerous, that's terrifying. Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, let me come back to you at this point. We're talking about how we've entered a very dangerous new era of technological warfare, where you don't know where the next attack may come from and what may be weaponized next. The question is that, today Israel has done this to Hezbollah, and our Israeli friend, seems to think everything's going to be all right, there's going to be no serious escalation, we'll see about that. But who is to know that there will not be copycat attacks of a similar nature? How do we know that a terror outfit or, a rogue government somewhere or a non-state actor is not going to take a cue from Israel or draw inspiration from these tactics and attempt a similar attack in the future? Could you unmute yourself, sir?
Yes, yeah. Sorry. So, no, you're very right. I think these risks and this danger definitely is, mounting. And what we'll really have to see now is how can technology be used? Meaning it is, what comes to my mind is that if there is an aircraft coming for an attack, and there is a radar that can, find out how the radar is traveling, how the aircraft is traveling. So what does the aircraft do? Either you try to jam the working of the radar in some way, or you go under the, the waves that are being caught by the radar. So I think technology will have to come, technology will have to develop as to how do you sanitize these instruments, also make sure. So, while we, as we've said, technology is a double-edged sword, and technology can be used for benefit of humanity. Technology can also be used for creating mayhem and death and destruction, as we are seeing in this particular case. So I think definitely it is going to be, it's a very dangerous phase that we are entering. And, any particular new technology, when it starts getting used, of course, it is a dangerous phase at that time. Again, let me bring the analogy to the drones. When the drones came and Azerbaijan started using, there was no response to it. Now, of course, we can see that, drones are also, can be shot down and so on and so forth. So I think all the technologists will get into the laboratories, see what is it that they can do so that such, plants in any sort of communication device or elsewhere, in any critical infrastructure systems, that, how they can protect them, make sure that the enemy, the hostile forces are not able to use and, against the people. So I think there is escalation ladder that has been put up here. and we'll really have to wait and see how it works out.
We are on an escalation ladder, clearly. I'll give the last word to Dr. Zakir Hussain as we wrap up this discussion. Dr. Hussain, these attacks are being seen as a major blow to Hezbollah. And, the fact that it will have a crippling effect on its communications network. Going forward, how do you see this panning out? Do you believe that a major regional escalation is now inevitable? How seriously should we read the message that's come out from the Hezbollah chief today?
What I feel that Israel is in a hurry to spread this war into region or into world. But Hezbollah and Iran and its proxy wants to wage a sustained continuous pressure on Iran and Israel, which Israel is not ready to bear it further because its army is war weary, its resources are going down, its economy is going down, its image in the world is going down. So this act has created panic in Lebanon society and gave 2 cheers to Israel. But I don't think that Hezbollah is going to be deterred. And what Nasrullah said, he will not turn this event into a full-fledged war. Rather, he will put a sustained pressure on Israel. And so far as Iran is concerned, it will not jump into the war till it attains nuclear weapon. It is waiting, it is bearing all those things just to get nuclear weapons. So Israel has to wait and watch, because if we listen the Trump debate, Trump said that Israel cannot sustain for 2 years more if such kind of war continues. So overall, for immediate reason, Israel seems winning, but its impact on Israel is very serious. I want to draw the attention of Houthis who fired hypersonic missile on Israel, and Israel has not revealed the damage which has done so far. So Israel is not going to win this war. This is very clearly written. It may create such type of things, and its defense minister said that we have more such capabilities to surprise the world. And I believe, and all experts believe, that Israel can do more like this, but this is not going to stop or deter Hezbollah, not
without consequences, and it's not going to be a deterrent. I think you're making an important point there, that Israel may want to claim victory, but at the end of the day, this will prove to be an expensive war for Israel. And you're saying Iran and its proxies want to keep Israel engaged in a sustained conflict, and for that reason we may not immediately see a major escalation. But one thing that we can all agree on is that a very dangerous precedent has been set, and the world has entered a very dangerous era of technological warfare. God knows where it's going to lead us. On that note, Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, Dr. Zakir Hussain, Major General Ashwini Savaj, thank you so much for joining me on Global Lens tonight. Okay, let's now move on to some other news, and this is from the United States. Today, India has outright rejected a report claiming that Indian-made artillery shells sold to European customers were ending up in Ukraine. The Ministry of External Affairs didn't mince its words, calling the report speculative and misleading. In their statement, the MEA emphasized India's strong track record when it comes to sticking to international rules around military exports. They also mentioned that all defense exports are carried out with strict assessments, including checks on end-user obligations and certifications. Earlier in the day, a report was carried by news agency Reuters suggesting that ammunition has been flowing to Ukraine for over a year despite India's regulations that prevent unauthorized transfers. It alleged that Russia has raised these concerns with India, including at a meeting between the foreign ministers of the two countries in July. Reuters claimed that while Indian-made shells make up less than 1% of the total arms Ukraine's using, some of these shells have been traced back to Indian defense contractors, and according to their sources, this includes Yantra India, a government-owned company. But as we said, the Indian government has called this report speculative. All right. Well, that was actually an update on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Our next story, in fact, has a US connection. Even as the United States preaches to the world against terrorism, a US court has acted on a petition filed by a man who's been designated as a terrorist by India, Gurpatwant Singh Pannon, a Khalistani separatist. And the court has issued summons to India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and other Indian officials. In this petition, Pannon accused these officials of plotting his murder on American soil. Now, local media, The Globe and Mail, quoting Pannon, reported that the lawsuit in the US District Court aims to hold Indian government accountable for its alleged role in the assassination plot. The lawsuit names former RNAW chief Samant Goyal and senior RNAW officer Vikram Yadav, amongst others, accusing them of orchestrating a murder for hire plot to kill Pannon. It alleges that Nikhil Gupta, currently jailed in New York, attempted to hire hitmen who turned out to be undercover US agents. Pannon has asserted that his life is still under threat and is seeking financial compensation for assault, which includes attempt to cause physical harm and for extreme emotional distress. Now, the Indian government has established a high-level inquiry committee to examine these allegations and has today responded to the court summons, calling this entire development ludicrous.
These are completely unwarranted and unsubstantiated imputations. Now that these this particular case has been lodged, it doesn't change our views about the underlying situation. I would only invite your attention to the person behind this particular case, whose antecedents are well known. I would also underline the fact that the organization, so-called, that this person represents is an unlawful organization, has been declared as such under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. And it has been done so on account of its involvement in anti-national and subversive activities aimed at disrupting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of India. And I don't want to say anything more than that at this point in time. I think that speaks for itself.
India, they're saying these claims that have been made by Pannon in a US court are absolutely unsubstantiated and unwarranted. As we wrap up this edition of Global Lens, let's get you some news from Canada, and well, this could have ramifications for India. Canada is making some major changes that are going to impact international students and temporary foreign workers. Recently, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government announced that it will be cutting down on study permits and tightening the rules around work permits. This means fewer international students and foreign workers coming into the country. Starting next year, Canada plans to reduce the number of study permits by 35%, and that's a big drop. For comparison, in 2023, the country approved over 500,000 study permits, but by 2025, that number is expected to drop to around 437,000. Trudeau has been vocal about the need to crack down on what he calls bad actors who take advantage of the system, and that's partly why these changes are happening. The government isn't just focusing on students, they're also tightening work permit eligibility, particularly for spouses of students and temporary foreign workers. There's going to be a review to make sure the visa process has better fraud detection. As we said, this is likely to have a strong impact on Indian students and professionals, as a very large number of them travel to Canada every year. But those numbers could now drop drastically as early as next year. All right, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us again at the same time.
Modi is the first ever Indian Prime Minister to visit Ukraine. His visit comes 2 years after around 17,000 Indian students were safely evacuated amidst the Russia-Ukraine war under his leadership. Watch Airlift, the story of how the evacuations unfolded, only on the News9 Plus app.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
how do ordinary folks deal with this?
PM Modi is the first ever Indian Prime Minister to visit Ukraine. His visit comes 2 years after around 17,000 Indian students were safely evacuated amidst the Russia-Ukraine war under his leadership. Watch Airlift, the story of how the evacuations unfolded, only on the News9 Plus app.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Here are the top headlines today. The Supreme Court has dismissed a petition filed by telecom companies on adjusted gross revenues. Vodafone India and Bharti Airtel were among the companies that filed a curative petition challenging the 2019 verdict that mandated that they needed to pay the government 92,000 crore rupees within 3 months. The centre is probing the circumstances that led to the death of a 26-year-old chartered accountant in Pune, allegedly due to excessive work stress. The incident sparked outrage after a letter written by the woman's mother to the head of Ernst & Young India went viral. The Bombay High Court has asked the Central Board of Film Certification to decide on the release of actor Kangana Ranaut's long-delayed film Emergency by the 25th of September. Actor Salman Khan's father Salim Khan has allegedly received a new underworld threat. Khan was out for a morning walk when a man and a burqa-clad woman on a motorcycle threatened him, citing gangster Lawrence Bishnoi's name. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister N. Chandrababu Naidu has accused the YSR Congress government of using animal fat in making the Tirupati Laddu. The Laddu is served as the prasad at the iconic Sri Venkateshwara temple. The YSRCP has dismissed Naidu's allegations as malicious. Disgraced choreographer Jani Master was arrested after an employee accused him of sexual harassment. Master, who has been suspended by the Telugu Film Chamber of Commerce, was taken into custody in Bengaluru and will be shifted to Hyderabad. The stalemate between doctors and the West Bengal government continues. The doctors decided to continue their agitation and cease work after the second round of talks with the government failed. At least 20 people were killed and more than 450 others injured after walkie-talkies and other electronic devices used by members of the Iran-backed Hezbollah detonated on the 18th of September. The incident came a day after thousands of pagers exploded simultaneously in Lebanon and parts of Syria, killing 12 people and injuring 3,000 others. The Canadian government has slashed the number of study permits for international students by 35%. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said his government will crack down on bad actors if they abuse the immigration system and take advantage of students. Israel has just carried out the mother of all microsurgical strikes. Thousands of pagers used by top Hezbollah leaders and fighters exploded, killing 12 persons on the 17th of September. Now, in the second wave of blasts, on the 18th of September, walkie-talkies exploded, again targeting Hezbollah operatives. Now, there is the Internet of Things, and there is Israel's explosives of things. It was a classic Trojan horse operation that's being traced to Israel's secretive Unit 8200, which specializes in cyber warfare. But the years of planning that went into this operation, floating dummy companies in Hungary that bought these Taiwan-made pagers and laced their batteries with plastic explosives, suggests other Israeli agencies were involved as well. Now, this is the perfect counter-terrorism operation. Israel has struck back at Iranian proxy Hezbollah, which it has been fighting for years. It's an operation without parallel. And this is why every global security agency, every country, and every terrorist outfit will be studying this carefully. But what are the implications of these Trojan horse attacks for a country like India, which has only recently started emphasizing on indigenous information communications technology equipment. Can another country use this method, this Trojan horse attack, to target India's security agencies, its armed forces, its lawmakers, its decision makers? And why must India accelerate its own domestic ICT ecosystem? Joining me to discuss this today is Lieutenant Colonel Rajan Pavitran, military intelligence veteran and a member of India's national security system. Colonel Rajan, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you, Sandy, for having me on the show.
I have in the studio with me my colleague Deepak Badana, who's been tracking these wave of attacks in the Middle East. But I want to start by asking you this, Colonel Pavitran, as someone who's constantly flagged the threat of imported hardware and software in India's ICT networks over the last decade, why are these blasts a wake-up call for India?
This definitely is a wake-up call for India because we have till now, like I've been constantly saying, allowed foreign products to control our ecosystem. When I say this, you might say that we are a global IT superpower. That was the narrative. But for the last 3-4 years, we realized we are not. We are just been an outsourced sweat workshop, and we have left ourselves very vulnerable. Our entire national ecosystem, which I have been trying to highlight for quite some time, is dominated by Chinese hardware and software at the core, and American systems in the military. And in our commercial spaces, it is mostly a mixture of both these, countries' ICT appliances which are dominating. So, when you look at it from that perspective, you realize how vulnerable you are.
We're vulnerable indeed. But Colonel Pavitran, illustrate for our viewers a scenario of how a hostile actor could use this modus operandi to target India's security forces, its lawmakers, its decision makers, the core that makes up India's security system.
Okay, when you look at modern times or the information age, what makes us modern and part of the information age is we are all constantly surrounded and constantly consume and use information and communication technology appliances like a smartphone, like a laptop. Maybe it can be a Amazon Nest, appliances, smartwatches. We are constantly surrounded by these. That's what makes it highly technology intense ecosystem.
Right.
And other than that, a lot of things which we take for granted in our critical information infrastructure, whether be it banking, whether it be the stock market, whether it be the power ecosystem, everything, be it industry, logistics, what have you, is infused with information and communication technologies.
Right. But, illustrate for us, for instance, this operation, we don't know what it's called, but, Operation Trojan Horse is an appropriate name for it. Could this be used to target, say, the Indian military? If you want to, say, target a certain specific group of people, is there a danger of this really happening? The fact that you've said how heavily our ecosystem is penetrated by foreign hardware and foreign appliances, foreign components.
Yes, definitely. The Indian military, since we do not have homegrown appliances, is heavily dependent upon appliances bought from foreign companies. During Snowden revelations, we realized that all these are backdoored,
right?
And but we continue to accept something called air gap systems.
Yes.
Which in the Snowden revelations itself, it was very apparent that there are no air gaps because they even brought out pictures where hardware and
yes.
Software appliances were injected into systems or implanted into systems to beat the air gap. But somehow we never transited to. We are one of the few countries which do not take measures.
Right.
And there is something called the Global Cyber Power Index, which is brought out by the Kennedy Belfer Center, based out of Harvard. It's a very comprehensive document based on multiple parameters which show nations based on their capabilities and intent. So India is shown as a nation which is lacking capability and surprisingly lacking intent, in spite of Atmanirbhar being pushed by this present government. So that makes us extremely vulnerable. And the Indian military, since it is modernizing fast and coming to the information age, like all other militaries, will have to have information and communication technologies embedded onto their person, onto their vehicle, on their weapon platforms, etc. Now, when you look at that, we don't control any of that. It paints a dangerous scenario where this military can be decapitated or disabled remotely by other powers. So that's a simple picture which I paint out here. And just imagine, we also have Motorola's walkie-talkies.
Yes, absolutely.
We also have acquired, smartphones, etc. for our communications.
Yes.
But who are these companies which have supplied?
Right.
Do we know where we are manufactured? Do we know the supply chain? Can these be, it is taken in military systems in the information age that all foreign weapon systems will have kill switches.
Right.
But today, after this, we have to realize that it is not only kill switches where it can be disabled remotely and bricked.
Yes.
It can also have switches that can kill you. From the cyber domain, you have now come into the kinetic domain of operations.
That's a very the very important observation, Colonel Pavitran. It could only come from an information warfare expert like you, that from the cyber warfare domain, you've actually transited to kinetic operation, that you have possibly for the first time, you have a cyber attack resulting in the death and maiming of several of these Hezbollah fighters. Of course, we always learn from these kind of operations. And Deepak, you've been listening very patiently. You have a question for Colonel Pavitran. You've been tracking this story closely.
Sir, let me take you back to your point about Snowden. Now, almost a decade ago, Snowden had told us about how Western intelligence agencies have infiltrated, the entire ICT world. Now, compared to that revelation, how does yesterday's or the day before yesterday's events look to you? Is this a bigger wake-up call than what Snowden had stated?
Okay, there are two ways to look at this. Snowden gave us evidences that the OEMs are not benevolent organizations. They are part of the national security architecture of the parent country. So what has happened today is a logical step forward, wherein it is not only backdoored for surveillance, but now it is very clear it is also can be weaponized. Now the truth is, in the last 2 days, whatever has come out, you will realize a certain narrative has emerged that this particular batch of pagers and walkie-talkies had implanted explosives.
Right.
Which, when I think about it from an intelligence and information warfare perspective, I know that the people who have done this are only, shaping the narrative environment, saying that, oh, it is only this particular batch which could have implanted explosives. Now, the truth is, we do not know whether it is only this batch or whether the whole technology, like the battery technology itself, has a dual use, where it can be weaponized without additional, explosive being planted. So that is where we are. And as on date, we need to go on the assumption, as a military man and as an intelligence professional, we need to work on an assumption that the technology itself is dual use, and it can be used to kinetically disable another adversary. Back to you.
That's very alarming. The fact that at the very core itself, the system is compromised at the raw material stage. If that's what you're suggesting, Colonel Pavitran. But this point that you made about the global supply chains being infiltrated, and this is what the Israelis have done against Hezbollah. Of course, it suits Israel's national security objectives to target Hezbollah, but there's always the prospect of this blueprint being cut-pasted by another country against India. And you just mentioned a few countries which have very deep hardware supply contracts with India, who have supplied a lot of ICT components, hardware, software to India. I was just looking at what Major General Mandeep Singh just shared today. He's a IDSA scholar. He's just put out this image of a heat map which shows the geospatial mapping of mobile phones across a city. This is the kind of data that can be easily accessed by service providers. And he says that imagine troops using private mobiles in the war zone or in the borders of an adversarial country where mobile phone data is hacked, or it's available with a phone manufacturer, or worse, what in the case of Hezbollah, where there was malware that was implanted into the pagers. It is easy to pick up the location of troops, commanders, users, as well as the size of the force itself by the density of the phones in that area. And in fact, Deepak, we've seen that in the Russia-Ukraine war, where mobile phones and the gathering of certain mobile phones has itself provided targeting solutions for both countries, both Russia and Ukraine. They've used this. So does this pose a new level of threat for the Indian Armed Forces? Because this is a level of threat that we've not seen, we've not been confronted with in the past, Colonel Pavitran.
So India is a reactionary state historically. We very rarely picturize the battle zone